You would rather be envied than happy. That's not an insult. It's a documented psychological phenomenon, and it applies to almost everyone watching this, including the people who are certain it doesn't apply to them. Given a choice between a life that feels deeply satisfying and a life that looks impressive from the outside, most humans, under pressure, pick the one other people can see. Not because you're shallow, because you're wired for a social competition that predates money, careers, and Instagram by about 200,000 years. Here's a question worth sitting with, honestly. When was the last time you made a significant decision? A job, a purchase, a relationship, a goal, and status played absolutely no role. Not the dominant role. Any role. For most people, that list is shorter than they'd like. It shows up as ambition, as standards, as taste, as self-improvement, and sometimes those things are genuine. But underneath a significant number of them, if you're honest, is a quieter question. What will this make people think of me? The job you took, not because it excited you, but because of what it signals. The degree you pursued because of the letters after your name. The neighborhood, the brand, the title. Most people are living a life optimized for the perception of success rather than the experience of it. And the gap between those two things is where a lot of quiet misery lives. Evolutionary psychologists have a term, dominance hierarchy. Every social species that has ever lived in groups has one. A ranking system, a pecking order. And the individuals higher in that order got more resources, more mates, more safety. For hundreds of thousands of years, your social rank determined your survival. Your neocortex knows you live in 2025. Your limbic system, the ancient part, the part that actually drives most of your behavior, is still running software written for a savanna. And in that software, falling in status is not embarrassing, it's existential. This is why public humiliation triggers the same neural regions as physical pain. Why being passed over for a promotion genuinely hurts. Why someone cutting you off in traffic can ruin your mood for an hour because some part of your brain reads it as a status challenge. Neuroscientist Robert Sapolsky spent decades studying stress in primates and humans. His finding, low social rank is one of the strongest predictors of chronic stress, poor health, and shortened lifespan. Not just in baboons, but in humans. On-screen text. Status anxiety isn't vanity. It's a survival alarm misfiring. The problem is that survival alarm was calibrated for a tribe of 150 people where your rank was visible, stable, and directly tied to your access to food and safety. Now you're being compared to 8 billion people simultaneously on a platform designed to show you everyone's highlight reel. The alarm never stops going off. Here's the part that makes this a trap, not just a tendency. Status is a treadmill, not a ladder. A treadmill, because the reference group moves with you. When you were earning $40,000 a year, $80,000 seemed like it would feel like success. When you got to $80,000, somehow $150,000 became the threshold. Every time you hit the mark, the comparison set expands. The goalposts migrate. The feeling you were chasing evaporates on arrival. Psychologists call this the hedonic treadmill. For status, it's even more aggressive because status is not absolute. It's relative, which means you can become objectively more successful every year and still feel behind because the people you're comparing yourself to are also moving. And here's the twist. Research by psychologist Timothy Wilson found that people are significantly better at predicting what will make them miserable than what will make them happy. We consistently overestimate how good achievement will feel and underestimate how quickly we'll adapt to it. You've been running toward a finish line that moves. The car, the title, the follower count, the house, each one delivers a brief spike of satisfaction, maybe a few weeks, and then becomes the new floor, the new minimum, and the chase resumes. The emotional cost of this is specific. It's not dramatic. It doesn't announce itself as a crisis. It's a low-grade numbness that settles in when you realize the thing you worked 5 years for didn't feel the way you thought it would. And you can't fully talk about it because from the outside, your life looks like success. And admitting the gap feels ungrateful, embarrassing, like a problem you're not. The loneliest feeling in modern life, achieving what you wanted and feeling nothing. That emptiness isn't ingratitude. It's what happens when you optimize for status instead of meaning. Status gives you a position. Meaning gives you a reason to hold it. Without the second thing, the first thing is just a number that keeps changing. And most people, without ever consciously deciding to, spend their entire productive years chasing the number and wondering why the feeling never arrives. The status economy is about to get much more sophisticated. AI doesn't just compete with human intelligence, it competes with human status signaling. Generative AI can now produce the outputs that once signaled status: the polished writing, the produced video, the designed brand, the curated aesthetic at near zero cost. Which means the status signals that used to require years of skill or significant wealth are becoming commodified. When everyone can project the appearance of high status, the appearance of high status stops conferring actual status. We are entering an era of status inflation. And the psychological arms race that follows, trying to find new signals that can't be replicated, will be exhausting. The people who anchor their identity to status will be in a permanent scramble. The goalposts won't just move, they'll be algorithmically optimized to stay perpetually out of reach. And the people who opted out of the game early, who built meaning, depth, and genuine skill instead of performance, will find that those things become rarer and therefore more valuable. In a world full of performed success, genuine depth is the new status. The goal is not to stop caring about status entirely. That's not realistic. It's not even human. The goal is to know when you're making decisions for the audience and when you're making them for yourself. Because the two produce very different lives, the decisions you make for the audience build a resume. The decisions you make for yourself build a life. Ask yourself, who am I actually trying to impress? Not as a judgment, as a diagnostic. Because if the honest answer is people whose opinion you dismiss in any other context, strangers online, colleagues you don't respect, a version of your parents you've long outgrown, that's worth knowing. Status that comes from performing for an audience you don't even like is the most expensive purchase you'll ever make. It costs years. It costs presence. It sometimes costs your actual health. And the return? A number that changes. A feeling that doesn't come. The most countercultural thing you can do right now is decide clearly, deliberately, what you actually want your life to feel like, not look like, feel like, and then build that quietly without the audience. If you found this helpful, subscribe, because next we're looking at the future of work after AI, and the people who are still chasing status in that world are going to get caught badly off guard.